alam naman nila na yung threat level ni Governor is mataas. The way I saw the video, medyo talagang hinahanap ko yung security doon.
These people are not ordinary criminals and they have plans para i-execute yung kanilang nefarious activities.
Ito ba yung mga common na ginagamit sa assassination? Or is this a very different group na talagang well-financed, well-funded?
I think it's important that we lock down areas in Bayawan, for example, where the suspects were captured, because I'm sure there's many more.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. The big story tonight.
Local politicians continue to face attacks over the weekend. Negros Oriental Governor Roel Degamo was shot in broad daylight. Degamo was gunned down by unidentified armed men in his home in the town of Pamplona. The governor was holding public consultations in his residence when 10 gunmen entered the gate and started firing. Aside from Degamo, 8 others were also killed, while at least 17 were injured. One of the 10 suspects were killed in a shootout with police, while 3 others were arrested. The suspects were identified as Joric Labrador, Joven Javier, and Irene Rodriguez. All 3 suspects are reportedly former soldiers with experience in special forces and close-quarter combat. They will face charges for multiple murder and illegal possession of firearms and explosives.
Aside from pursuing the other suspects in the killing, the National Police is also investigating if there are security lapses which allowed the perpetrators to easily carry out the attack. For her part, Senator Irene Marcos wants Negros Oriental placed under a state of emergency following the attack. The senator who called the slain governor an old friend was present in his wake on Sunday. Degamo also supported President Bongbong Marcos during his candidacy last year. Police are now investigating all possible motives in the killing, including political rivalry.
And speaking of that political angle, Negros Oriental Congressman Arnie Tevis is denying any involvement in Degamo's murder. In a video message, Tevis said he expects to be implicated in the case given that his brother, Henry Tevis, ran against Degamo in last year's elections and was initially proclaimed the winner. Degamo filed an election protest to declare a certain Ruel Degamo as a nuisance candidate, which paved the way for a recount in favor of the slain governor. The COMELEC then annulled Henry Tevis' proclamation and then declared Ruel Degamo as governor. The case was elevated to the Supreme Court, which affirmed the COMELEC's ruling less than a month before the ambush. Meanwhile, Congressman Arnie Tevis insists that he and his brother have nothing to gain from killing Degamo.
Kung may balak man ako o may kakayahan na gawin ito, di sana ginawa ko na to bago pa mag-eleksyon. Hindi rin magiging benepisyaryo ako at ang kapatid ko. Dahil kung mawala ang gobernador, ang uupo naman ang vice governor. Hindi naman ang kapatid ko na talagang nanalo ng eleksyon.
The planned week-long transport strike of several transport groups began today. Organizers of the strike are protesting against the government's PUV modernization program, which intends to phase out dilapidated or old public transport vehicles. The program aims to replace jeepneys with vehicles that have at least a Euro 4 compliant engine to lessen pollution and added safety and modern features to benefit riders. But drivers and operators complained about the cost of the new units, which some are priced at over 2 million pesos. Around 100,000 jeepney drivers and operators across the country reportedly began their strike earlier today. Pinagkaisang samahan ng mga tsoper at operator nationwide President Modi Floranda said only an executive order from President Marcos scrapping the omnibus franchising guidelines, which effectively phase out traditional jeepneys, will stop their action.
At ahead of today's protest action, Metro Manila mayors agreed to provide commuters free rides during the week-long jeepney strike. The Interior Department also said service patrols of the 1,700 barangays in Metro Manila were on standby to ferry affected passengers. As for the MMDA, the agency lifted the number coding scheme on the first day of the jeepney strike, and then they now announced that it will provide 25 vehicles, including buses, to pick up passengers. Vice President Sara Duterte, who's concurrently education chief, said all schools may hold asynchronous classes during the strike. Malacanang, meanwhile, said that there was no disruption in transportation except in some routes in NCR. The EDSA busway carousel was not affected by the strike, adding that its operation has been running smoothly with a low passenger volume observed at all stations. And here to share with us how the first day of the week-long transport strike went, we have with us live via Zoom Manibela Chairperson Mar Valbuena. Good evening. Welcome to The Big Story, Mr. Valbuena.
Good evening, Sir Robbie and Ma'am Gretchen.
Sir, sa inyo po, sa panig nyo, na-monitor nyo, ano po ang tingin nyo? Kamusta ang strike at mas mahalaga doon ang mensahe na gusto nyo ipahiwatig?
Sir Robbie, ngayong araw na to talagang nakuha namin yung simpatya ng aming mga kasamahan. Dito sa buong Pilipinas, tinarget lang din naman namin talaga yung mga malalaking syudad, lalo na tong NCR. Talagang naparalisa yung biyahe, hindi dahil marami kami o konti kami. Naging laban kasi dito, wala na talagang lumabas na halos na tao sa lansangan.
Okay, sir, just linawin lang po din namin sa inyo, no? Hindi po kayo tutol sa PUV modernization program, sa modernization po ng inyong mga sasakyan, tama po ba?
Tama po, Mama Gretchen. Ang tinututulan lang natin dito yung mga provisions po na nakalagay doon na nagpapahirap po sa atin.
Okay, nababanggit nyo nga po, napakamahal po nitong mga modern jeepneys na ito. Para po sa inyo, ano po yung makatwiran na pag-transition doon nga po, doon sa mga modern jeepneys, sakasakaling papalitan? Ano po ba yung dapat pakinggan?
Ma'am, kasi kung titignan mo, yung jeepneys natin ngayon na bumibiyahe, around 700 to 800,000 pesos, napakaganda na niya. So, konting retouch lang ito para maging compliant. Ibig sabihin, yung nakakatayo kami sa loob, bukas yung pintuan at Euro 5 na yung engine. Malaking bagay po na ito yung gagayahin pa rin kasi mas mura siya, mas matibay pa.
Sir, samantala po, ano po ang abiso nyo sa mga mananakay sa mga darating na araw pa? Tuloy pa po ba ang mga plano, ang pagwewelga sa darating na linggo?
Opo, Sir Robbie, tuloy-tuloy po lang ang tigil pasada pero wala na po kaming mga aktibidad po sa kalsada.
Okay, sir, para po malinawan lang po tayo, kasi parang ngayon nga, step 1 po yung pagbuo ng kooperatiba. Pagkatapos po nun, ano po yung susunod na step na nire-require po sa inyo ng gobyerno? Ano po masasabi po ninyo doon po sa yung step 1, step 2 at yung magkakasunod na proseso po niyan?
Ma'am Gretchen, kapag meron na kaming kooperatiba, pwede na kaming mag-apply ng consolidation sa LTFRB. Pero ngayon kasi may mga nauna sa ruta, kailangan mag-join na kami o mag-umbrella doon sa existing cooperatives na nakapag-consolidate na. So yun po yung ayaw namin mangyari. So ano po yung implications nito kung hindi po kami sasama? So kung hindi po kami sasama, babawiin na po ng gobyerno yung aming prangkisa at pwede pong i-award doon sa existing po na transport cooperative. So, pwedeng hindi na kami tanggapin din kung mag-a-apply kami o magpapamiyembro kami doon sa existing consolidated cooperatives, or kung tatanggapin man nila kami, mas malaki na yung membership fee na babayaran namin kasi nga ipit na kami. No choice kami kundi sumali lang sa kanila.
Sir, sa tingin niyo ba po itong nagaganap ngayon na protesta ninyo ay magbubunga ng dialogue with LTFRB at mga iba pang opisina ng gobyerno?
Yes, sir. Hindi po kasi kami nakapag-dialogo ng maayos kasi imbis po na nung una nakita natin si Chairman Guadis na ang sabi niya extend ito ng 1 year at pwede na yung 2 to 3 cooperative doon po sa isang ruta. Pero nung nilabas po, Sir Robbie, yung memorandum circular, kabaliktaran po doon sa sinabi niya. So, ang hirap po nung, ang bigat nung nilabas nilang memorandum circular na to, kaya pinapa-scrap natin. Nga lamang ang nangyari, in-extend lamang po ito ng 1 year, pero yung mga provisions po doon na nagpapahirap sa amin, nandun pa rin.
Sir, babanggitin lang po natin yung mga binanggit po na ating Vice Presidente. Sabi po nila, nakakaantala po kayo sa mga klase. Kumbaga, huli na tayo, tapos nangyari po ito. Kailangan po ba talaga 1 linggo ang strike po natin? At ano po masasabi po ninyo doon sa mensahe po ng ating Vice President?
Sabi nga po nila, merong online classes naman. Sana ito maintindihan po nila kasi gusto po natin ng malinaw na dialogo o sinserong dialogo po galing sa LTFRB at DOTR. Hindi po sana yung pampalubag loob lamang o pakonsuelo di bobo na para itigil namin ito, konting kalabit lang, okay na kami.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Manibela Chairperson Mar Balbuena.
Right after the break. Authorities are still trying to contain the oil spill in Oriental Mindoro. We will be speaking with Dr. Irene Rodriguez of the UP Diliman Marine Science Institute over the possible damage expected from the spill. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. You're watching the big story here on One News.
Authorities are still trying to contain the spreading oil from the sunken tanker Princess Empress. Here's what we know. Princess Empress, which is loaded with around 800,000 liters of industrial oil, sank off the coast of Nauhan, Oriental Mindoro last week. Since then, the oil slick has spread to around 25 kilometers, reaching the coast of other towns in Oriental Mindoro, like Pola and Bulalakaw, and most recently, the Kaluya Island in Antique. The UP Marine Science Institute is warning, however, of the oil spill's effect on mangroves and corals. Experts say the oil spill threatens some 20,000 hectares of corals in Bulalakaw, almost 10,000 hectares of mangroves in Kaluya, and 6,000 seagrass beds in Pola, Mansalay, and Bulalakaw. Now, what methods can be done to respond to the oil spill? Well, according to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, one common way is the spraying of dispersants, which is a chemical that can break up an oil slick into small droplets. This is a method currently being used by responders.
The smaller the droplets are, the easier it is for microbes in the ocean to feed on them. However, this method does not remove spilt oil from the water. It only helps in making oil particles more easily biodegraded. Still, some environmentalists say that as long as there's oil in the water, it remains a threat to marine life and corals. Another proposed method for response is the use of booms or floating barriers to contain the oil. Fire booms are used in some cases to burn off fuel and speed up the containment process. The last and most taxing method is called skimming, or the use of mechanical equipment to physically remove oil from the water. Now, in the case of the Guimaras oil spill in 2006, the Philippines contracted an Italian company which deployed remotely operated vehicles to retrieve 14,000 tons of crude oil from the sunken vessel. The price tag reached a whopping $12 million, or 600 million pesos, paid for using the insurance of the sunken ship. Now, in the case of Princess Empress, the government says it will ask the help of Japan in containing the massive oil spill.
Here to talk to us about their forecast on the reach of the Princess Empress oil spill, we have with us on the show Dr. Irene Rodriguez, Associate Professor from the Marine Science Institute in UP Diliman. Welcome to The Big Story, Professor.
Good evening, Robbie and Gretchen, and good evening to all listeners.
Ma'am, we've been talking about the oil spill, but we've touched on it a bit, but maybe you could expound even further. Talk about the ecosystem in that area that might be affected.
So the site where the oil spill occurred, as you mentioned already in the intro, is in the Tabla Strait. So this is off Pola in Oriental Mindoro. And based on projections done by our colleagues here at the Marine Science Institute, the trajectory of the oil slick will be southwest. That explains why there are reports already of the oil reaching coastal environments in Mansalay, in Bulalakaw, and also in Kaluya Island. Okay, so the trajectory of the oil slick is largely controlled by physical factors, including the wind direction and also the wind speed. Okay, so that's why we are seeing it in this area southward because of the prevailing weather conditions. Now, in terms of the ecosystems that will be impacted, you already mentioned it, the hectareage of mangroves, corals, and also seagrass beds that will be affected. Okay, in general terms, the impact, so the immediate impact will be death of juveniles and also the eggs and the sperm that are already available on the surface of the water that may be influenced by the presence of the oil slick on the water column. And thinking of long-term exposure, this will have influence on the ecosystems because of just the mere presence of the oil will hinder a lot of biological processes from occurring smoothly. Okay.
Kanina po, we were showing pictures of an oil spill in Guimaras in 2006. How does this compare in terms of size, but also in terms of a potential long-term impact?
Okay, so the one in 2006, which occurred in Guimaras, the vessel was carrying 500,000 liters of oil. Princess Empress is carrying with it 800,000 liters of oil. And just the scale, or just comparing the amount of oil in these two instances, we are looking at a larger scale of impact, if that is indeed released in the water.
Okay, ma'am, you came up with several scenarios of the wind blowing the oil towards different areas. Have you zeroed in on the southwest movement? And what would be your advice to those who are looking to contain this? Where do we first start if it's, all over?
So based on prevailing weather conditions, it is indeed going southward, which explains reports of it in the southern part of Pola. And to contain it, the best possible scenario will be to contain it very close to the source. Okay, so DNR and the Philippine Coast Guard are already working on identifying this exact location so we can address it. We can address the oil slick very close to the point source. Now, in terms of those the parts or the fraction of the oil that already spread to neighboring towns or the southern part of Oriental Mindoro, what can be done is to be prepared for it already. Okay, so it will be good for the coastal communities in these southern parts of Pola and Nauhan to be informed that, okay, their coast may be inundated with the oil slick, and then they can already prepare kind of a dam to direct the flow of the oil into. And in that case, we minimize the areas where it will be affected by the oil. Kind of sacrifice one part so that the majority of the coast will be protected. Yeah, in addition to that, the coastal communities can already organize themselves and prepare for coastal cleanup, the efforts to really participate in coastal cleanups. And additionally, a lot of our fellow men are reliant on the sea for their livelihood. So it is better to be prepared that you will not be able to go out to catch fish. So it's best to prepare in terms of that alternative livelihood source in the next weeks.
Ma'am, in the meantime, based on past experience as well, I mean, not just Guimaras, but how would you assess the capacity of our government, of our country, of all sectors involved, and for that matter, at the community level? What capacity do we actually have to contain and not only to contain, but also to address the fallout and the impact of this oil spill?
Unfortunately, I have to be frank here. We have technical expertise in NGAs or national government agencies, but in terms of technical know-how down to our coastal communities, they are not properly informed how to handle this. So probably that's one aspect that moving forward we can address, so in our educational system, and also in terms of capability. So the machineries, we are not as equipped as what is expected of an archipelagic country. So this is where we are lacking, and probably one aspect that our government, our LGUs will have to be prepared for moving forward.
Ma'am, final question lang po, no? Doon po sa trajectory nung oil spill. Is there still a possibility that it might move towards the Verde Island Passage, move up north, even if it's been going southwest?
The existing weather conditions right now favor southward movement or the southward trajectory of the slick. And this will only flip to the north direction if the prevailing conditions, wind directions, will change. And based on projections in the next days, it will still be going southwards.
Alright.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Marine Science Institute Associate Professor Irene Rodriguez.
Thank you for having me.
Two other neophytes of the Tau Gamma Phi fraternity who underwent hazing along with John Matthew Salinig have agreed to testify against suspects involved in the crime. The witnesses identified by the aliases Bin Laden and Lee are also students of Adamson University. Bin Laden claims it was Tung Cheng Teng Jr., the Grand Master of the fraternity's Adamson chapter, who ordered them to bury Salilig's body. The two neophytes also showed authorities the wounds they got from the initiation rites. Another suspect, Lester John Seuss, meanwhile surrendered to the NBI, where he confessed that he was among the group that buried Salilig's body. He also confessed to changing the plate number of the SUV they used to go to Cavite. The Binyan police says they will file charges against members of the fraternity who have yet to surrender, but they are now considering the case solved.
Either the status of this case is solved, because of the arrest of the officers of the Tau Gamma chapter of the Adamson, and the revelation and the evidences na nakuha natin lahat, we consider it solved na.
After the break, The MTRCB continues its push for an expanded mandate that will cover online streaming. More details on that when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
You're still watching the big story here on One News. The MTRCB says it's high time for Congress to expand its authority as more Filipinos have turned to online streaming services as their source of entertainment. During the hearing of the Senate Committee on Public Information and Mass Media, MTRCB Chairperson Lala Soto Antonio urged Senator Robin Padilla, who heads the Senate panel, to enhance the mandate of the regulatory body. Antonio said this is due to the numerous complaints regarding lewd content being released online, such as TikTok, YouTube, and other online streaming platforms. The MTRCB chief explained that they are not trying to control freedom of expression and creation, but to only hold accountable those who upload, quote, irresponsible videos.
Hindi po namin mabilang. Dahil araw-araw po may complaint po kaming nare-receive with regard to materials that are streamed online and nakikita po sa mga user-generated content. Never po namin sinabi na i-review ang mga material. Napaka-imposible pong mangyari nun. All we want is a direct line to them so that we can tell them where they're going wrong. This is not acceptable in our country. We can issue notices and we expect them to take action.
Face masks and vaccination cards are no longer required in tourism facilities. The Tourism Department announced this in a memorandum as part of government's campaign to further ease COVID-19 restrictions. The DOT believes this move will drive more tourists and travelers to the Philippines. This is a bid to boost the economy.
And before we go, from a dump site to green space, the local government of Quezon City has converted the Payatas Controlled Disposal Facility into an eco-friendly park for cyclists. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte and Assistant City Administrator Alberto Quimpo personally visited and inspected the bike trails to see if it was completely safe for cyclists. Now, the city government said that it aims to give life to the PCDF and continuously improve it so it can benefit the local community. Now, once the necessary inspections are finished, the park will be open later this year. They have also started building walking and jogging paths and view decks overlooking the La Mesa Dam scenery and Sierra Madre mountain range. There will also be a pet park for fur parents, an open amphitheater for events or concerts, and other Instagrammable places to visit.
Excited ang pamalang lungsod Quezon na unti-unti na nating simulan itong mga proyektong ito para sa benepisyo rin ng ating mga mamamayan.
Kaya kumuha na ako ng mountain bike para mag-bike.
Oo nga, nakita ko nga.
But you know, my bike mates were wondering, kamusta kaya yung amoy? Kasi parang,
We'll see. Ako, I'm personally intrigued and I would love to see that park and the progress made. Of course, maraming NGOs, daming CSOs, and the community leaders as well, trying very hard for many decades now to
renovate, to change the face,
and
and
to
also
still
improve.
work with
Yes.
the community of Payatas. That is still a very much vibrant and living community. I'm very much intrigued with that initiative by Quezon City government.
Well, kudos to that.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. Ako po si Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.